I didn't think anything of the invitation when it showed up in the mail. Our town had these charity galas all the time. Fundraisers for the hospital wing, the animal shelter, sometimes the public schools. And usually they were the kind of events where people dressed a little nicer than usual, drank too much cheap champagne, and pretended they cared about causes they barely understood. This one was for a children's literacy foundation downtown. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, the kind that made you feel like you should probably say yes, even if you didn't want to. My husband, Daniel, tossed it onto the kitchen counter like it was just another bill. "You want to go to this?" he asked without really looking at it. I was standing at the sink rinsing coffee mugs. "It's for a good cause." That's what they all say. But a couple days later, he surprised me. "I got his tickets," he said casually one evening while scrolling through something on his phone. "Thought it might be nice. Get out for once." That alone should have tipped me off that something was strange. Daniel hated events like that. Small talk, donors, photo ops, the whole thing made him uncomfortable. Usually, he found excuses to avoid them. Still, I didn't question it. At the time, I was just relieved. The last year of our marriage had felt distant. Not explosive, not dramatic, just quiet in a way that made the house feel bigger than it actually was. We'd been married 12 years, lived in the same 2-story house outside Columbus since year 3. 2 dogs, no kids, a comfortable routine that had once felt stable. Then something shifted. Daniel started working later. He took more weekend projects, more client dinners, more sudden phone calls he had to take outside. I asked about it a few times. "Just a busy quarter," he always said. And because I trusted him, I accepted that answer. The charity event was on a Saturday night in early October, one of those crisp Midwest evenings where the air feels sharp and the sky turns this deep dark blue after sunset. I wore a navy dress I'd had for years. Daniel wore a charcoal suit he barely touched except for weddings or funerals. We drove downtown together, windows down, the city lights reflecting off the river as we crossed the bridge. At the time, it felt almost romantic, like we were reconnecting after a long stretch of drifting. The venue was a renovated warehouse turned event hall. Exposed brick walls, hanging string lights, round tables with white linens, people in cocktail dresses and suits milling around with wine glasses. You know the type of place. We checked in, grabbed drinks, and started making the usual rounds of polite conversation. Daniel seemed relaxed, even charming, laughing more than usual, shaking hands with people I didn't recognize. That should have been the second sign, because my husband wasn't exactly a social butterfly. About an hour into the event, I wandered toward the silent auction tables while Daniel went to the bar. That's when everything started unraveling. At first, it was just a voice behind me. "Oh my God, it's so nice to finally meet you." I turned around expecting someone from Daniel's office or maybe a mutual acquaintance. Instead, I saw a woman I had never met before. Late 30s maybe, blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a simple black dress. She looked friendly in that open, casual way some people have. But there was something in her eyes when she looked at me. Recognition, familiarity, like we already knew each other. "I'm sorry," I said, smiling politely. "Have we met?" She blinked, surprised. "Oh, you're not..." Her voice trailed off as confusion spread across her face. Not exactly the reaction you expect at a charity gala. "Not what?" I asked. She hesitated, glancing toward the bar area, then back at me. "You're Daniel's wife, right?" The question hit me as normal enough. "Yeah," I said. Her expression shifted instantly. It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, but I saw it. The way her smile stiffened, the way her shoulders tightened like she'd just realized she'd stepped into something she didn't understand. "Oh," she said quietly, and that one word made my stomach drop. Because people don't say, "oh," like that unless something is wrong. I forced a small laugh. "I feel like I'm missing part of this conversation." She opened her mouth, closed it again, then gave this awkward half smile. "I'm Claire," she said. We shook hands. Her grip was nervous. "Sorry," she added quickly. "I just thought you were someone else." "Someone else who's married to my husband?" Her eyes widened slightly. "I didn't mean it like that. But the damage was already done. You know those moments where your brain starts connecting dots you didn't even know existed? Where your instincts start screaming before your logic catches up? That's what it felt like." "So how do you know Daniel?" I asked. The question hung between us. Claire looked toward the bar again. Daniel was still there, leaning against the counter, talking to a guy in a blue blazer, laughing, totally unaware that the ground beneath our marriage had just started cracking open. "He helps out sometimes," she said carefully. "With what?" Her hesitation stretched just a little too long. "Community stuff," she finally said. That answer made zero sense. I frowned. "Like volunteering?" She nodded too quickly. "Yeah, exactly." But something about the way she said it felt rehearsed, like a line she'd used before. I was about to press further when a little boy ran up beside her, maybe 6 years old, brown hair, big eyes. He tugged lightly on her arm. "Mom, they said the dessert table's open." "Mom." I smiled automatically at him.
Then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. His eyes. They were the exact same shade of green as Daniel's. Now, I know that sounds insane. Lots of people have green eyes. But when you've been married to someone for over a decade, you know their features the way you know your own reflection. Something about that kid's face felt familiar. Claire noticed me looking. Her body went rigid. "This is Ethan," she said quickly. "Hi," I said gently. He smiled in that easy, fearless way kids do. "Hi." Then he looked past me, directly toward the bar, toward Daniel, and his face lit up. "Mom," he whispered loudly, tugging her sleeve again. "That's him." My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Claire's face drained of color. "Ethan," she said quietly. But it was too late. The boy was already waving. "Daniel?" My husband turned. Across the crowded room. Our eyes met for a split second, and I watched the exact moment he realized what was happening. His smile disappeared. His entire body froze. Then his gaze shifted slightly to my right, to Claire, to the child standing next to her, to the silent catastrophe unfolding in front of him. Daniel's face went pale in a way I had never seen before in 12 years of marriage. Not guilt, not embarrassment. Panic. The kind of panic that comes from someone whose entire secret life just walked into the same room. I turned slowly back to Claire. She looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. "You thought I was someone else," I said quietly. She didn't answer. "Who?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Across the room, Daniel was already moving toward us. Fast. Too fast for a casual conversation. And suddenly I understood something deep in my gut. This charity event?
These tickets he insisted we buy. The strange familiarity in Claire's eyes. The child who recognized my husband across a crowded room. This wasn't an accident. This was a collision between two lives that were never supposed to meet. And I had the terrifying feeling that the life I thought I was living might not be the only one my husband had. Daniel moved through the crowd like a man trying to outrun something invisible. People stepped aside for him automatically, still smiling, still holding their wine glasses, completely unaware that the calm, polite atmosphere of the room had just become the stage for something that felt like it was about to explode. I stood there with Claire and the little boy, Ethan, while my heart pounded so loudly I was convinced they could both hear it. Claire kept glancing between me and Daniel, like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. Ethan didn't seem to notice the tension at all. He was still smiling, still waving toward Daniel like he'd just spotted his favorite person. "Daniel!" he called again, this time louder. Heads turned. Daniel reached us a few seconds later, breathing slightly heavier than normal. Up close, I could see the color had completely drained from his face. For a moment, no one spoke. 3 adults and 1 child standing in the middle of a charity gala, while string lights twinkled overhead and some jazz trio played softly in the corner. It felt surreal, like we were trapped inside a quiet bubble, while the rest of the room kept moving. "Hey, buddy," Daniel said finally. His voice sounded wrong, too careful, too measured. Ethan grinned and hugged his waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. And that's when something inside my chest cracked open. Kids hug people they trust. Kids hug people they know. This wasn't the awkward hug of a child greeting a stranger. This was familiarity, routine. "Hi," Ethan said happily. "Mom said we might see you tonight." Daniel froze again. Very slowly, he looked up at Claire. Her eyes were wide with silent apology. Then he looked at me. I didn't recognize the expression on his face. Fear. Not the kind that comes from getting caught in a small lie. This was the kind that comes from watching an entire carefully constructed reality collapse. I spoke before he could. "Daniel," I said calmly, "who is this?" The calmness surprised even me. But I'd always been like that under pressure. The quieter I got, the worse the situation probably was. He swallowed. "This is, He glanced quickly at Claire again, like he was hoping she'd somehow rescue him. She didn't. "This is Claire," he said finally. "I know that part," I replied, my voice still steady, too steady. "And Ethan?" I asked. Daniel looked down at the boy clinging to him. For a brief moment, something soft crossed his face, something warm. Then it vanished. "He's Claire's son." Ethan looked up at him, confused. "Daniel, are you staying for dessert?" he asked. The room suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. Claire quickly placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Sweetheart, why don't you go see if they still have those chocolate cupcakes?" He frowned. "But, go on," she said gently. After a second, he nodded and ran off toward the dessert table. The second he was far enough away, Claire exhaled shakily. "I didn't know she'd be here," she said quietly. I blinked. "You didn't know I'd be here?" Daniel rubbed his forehead.
Can we not do this here? He muttered. That sentence, that exact sentence, it lit a fuse inside me. Oh no, I said softly. We are absolutely doing this here. A couple at the next table glanced over. Daniel lowered his voice. Please. I turned to Claire. How long have you known my husband? She looked like she wanted to disappear. About 4 years? 4 years. The numbers slammed into my chest like a physical object. Daniel had been coming home to me every night while somehow building a 40-year connection with this woman. 4 years doing what exactly? I asked. Silence. Daniel stared at the floor. Claire stared at Daniel. I felt like the only person in the room willing to say words out loud. Let me guess, I said. Community volunteering? Claire winced. Daniel finally spoke. It's not like that. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. Then what exactly is it like? He opened his mouth, but Claire spoke first. He helps us, she said. I turned toward her slowly. Helps you? How? Again that hesitation, again that look between them. And suddenly another piece of the puzzle slid into place. Our savings, I said quietly. Daniel's head snapped up. What? The money, I continued. The money you said you were moving around from the garage remodel. His expression changed instantly. Guilt. Pure, unmistakable guilt. Claire looked confused now. What garage remodel? I laughed again, louder this time. Oh my God. I looked back at Daniel. The garage remodel you said was my birthday surprise. The one he'd been budgeting for all year. The one that had quietly drained almost $40,000 from our savings account. My chest tightened as the realization formed. That money didn't go to a remodel, did it? Daniel's silence answered everything. Claire's hand slowly covered her mouth. You told her it was for a garage? She whispered. He didn't respond. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. So where did it go? I asked. Daniel looked like he was running through possible lies in his head and realizing none of them would work. Claire spoke again. He's been helping us with rent, she said quietly. Every word felt like a hammer hitting bone. School tuition. Another hit. Medical bills. My hands started shaking. Daniel, I whispered. What is she talking about? He rubbed his face again, like he could wipe the entire situation away. I was just trying to help, he muttered. Help who? His eyes slowly moved toward the dessert table, where Ethan was happily stacking cupcakes onto a plate. My stomach dropped again, a horrible possibility forming in the back of my mind. No, I said quietly. Daniel didn't speak. Daniel. Still silence. Daniel, tell me I'm wrong. Claire looked back and forth between us, panic rising in her expression. You didn't tell her? She asked him. He closed his eyes. That was the moment I knew. The moment everything shifted from suspicion to something far worse. Claire turned toward me slowly, realization spreading across her face. Oh my God, she whispered. I could barely breathe. Tell me, I said. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Tell me what? Claire looked at Daniel like she was waiting for permission. He didn't give it. Finally, she spoke. Ethan is Daniel's son. The world didn't explode. There was no dramatic noise, no shouting, just a quiet, suffocating silence inside my own head. 4 years, a child, tens of thousands of dollars, an entire hidden life running parallel to mine. And suddenly, the charity event made sense. Daniel hadn't brought me here for romance, or reconnecting, or supporting a good cause. He'd brought me here because he never expected the two halves of his life to collide in the same room. But they had, and now there was nowhere left to hide. For a few seconds after Claire said it, I couldn't hear anything except the dull, rushing sound in my ears. Ethan is Daniel's son. The sentence kept repeating in my head like an echo that wouldn't fade.
Across the room, Ethan was still at the dessert table, carefully balancing a paper plate stacked with cupcakes like it was the most important mission in the world, completely unaware that the adults standing 20 feet away were quietly detonating their lives. I looked at Daniel, really looked at him. 12 years of marriage, thousands of mornings together, vacations, anniversaries, quiet Sunday nights on the couch, and suddenly I felt like I was staring at a stranger wearing my husband's face. You have a son, I said. It didn't even sound like a question. Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly, like the final defense had just been knocked down. Yes. That single word felt heavier than anything he could have said. Claire stepped back a little, clearly realizing she had just thrown a grenade into the middle of a marriage she didn't fully understand. I thought she knew, she said quietly. Daniel ran a hand through his hair.
I was going to tell her. I actually laughed, right there in the middle of a charity gala, a sharp, disbelieving laugh that made a couple nearby guests glance over again. Really? I said. When exactly were you planning to do that? Year 5 of your secret kid or year 10? Lower your voice, he muttered. That was the wrong thing to say. Oh, I'm sorry, I replied, my voice rising despite myself. Wouldn't want to make this awkward. Claire looked like she wanted to disappear. I should probably... No, I said quickly, turning back to her. You should stay. Because suddenly I needed answers, and I had a feeling Daniel had been lying long enough that the truth might actually come from the other person in this situation. How old is he? I asked. Claire swallowed. 6. 6 years old. My brain did the math automatically. 6 years ago, Daniel and I had taken a trip to Denver for our 10th anniversary. We'd spent 3 days hiking, drinking local beer, talking about maybe adopting a dog. 6 years ago, I thought my marriage was solid, and apparently that was the same year my husband had gotten another woman pregnant. I looked back at Daniel. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly. You cheated on me? He didn't answer. You got her pregnant? Still silence. You had a child? He shifted his weight but didn't deny it. And then you spent the last 6 years pretending none of that existed. That's not fair, he said quietly. I stared at him. Not fair? Claire stepped in, her voice shaky. Daniel didn't abandon him, she said quickly. He's always helped. He's always been there. That statement hit me like ice water. Always been there. Just not with me. How often? I asked. Daniel looked at the floor. How often do you see him? Sometimes weekends, Claire admitted. Weekends. The words spun around in my head. Daniel worked a lot of weekends. Or at least, that's what he told me. And the money? I said. He rubbed his face again. I was trying to make sure they were okay. With our savings. I was going to replace it. I stared at him. You stole $40,000 from our account to support your other family. His jaw tightened. I didn't steal it. Oh, really? Because I definitely don't remember agreeing to financially support the woman you cheated on me with and the child you hid for 6 years. Claire looked stunned now. You told me she knew about the money, she said to Daniel. His head snapped toward her. I said she knew I was helping. You said it was complicated, but that she understood. The tension between them suddenly shifted, and I realized something almost funny in a completely dark way. They had been lying to each other too. Different versions of the same story. Different pieces of Daniel's double life. I shook my head slowly. This is unbelievable. Daniel finally looked up at me. I didn't plan any of this. That sentence lit another fire inside me. You didn't plan to cheat? He didn't answer. You didn't plan to hide a child for 6 years? Still silence. You didn't plan to drain our savings account while telling me you were building me a birthday surprise garage? His voice came out strained. I was trying to handle everything. I leaned closer. No, you were trying to handle 2 lives. Across the room, Ethan began walking back toward us with his cupcake tower. Claire noticed immediately. Not here, she whispered urgently. Daniel nodded. Let's go outside. I crossed my arms. Why? So he doesn't hear this. For a second, I considered refusing just out of pure anger. But then Ethan got closer, smiling, and something in my chest twisted in a completely unexpected way. Because none of this was his fault. He was just a kid who clearly adored the man I thought was only my husband. So I nodded. We moved toward the exit doors near the side of the hall, slipping outside into the cool October air. The streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Inside the building, the music and chatter continued like nothing was wrong. Claire stayed near the door with Ethan. Daniel and I walked a few steps farther down the sidewalk. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest like a stone. Are you in love with her? Daniel looked stunned. No. You're sure about that? Yes. Then why are you supporting them like they're your family? His answer came quietly. Because they are. That sentence hurt more than the cheating, more than the lies, because it meant something simple and brutal. For 6 years, my husband hadn't just been sneaking around. He'd been living 2 realities, 2 families, 2 homes, and I had been the only one who didn't know. I looked down the sidewalk, trying to process the weight of it. Does he know? I asked. Know what? That you're his father. Daniel hesitated. Yes. I nodded slowly. Of course he does. Because the way Ethan looked at him earlier wasn't confusion. It was recognition, trust, love, the kind a child has for a parent. Does anyone else know? I asked. My parents, Daniel admitted quietly. That one nearly knocked the air out of me. Your parents know you have a secret child and they never told me? They thought I had. I laughed again, but this time it felt hollow. This is unbelievable. Behind us, Ethan's voice drifted through the door as he excitedly told Claire about the cupcakes he'd picked. A normal moment, a child enjoying dessert. Meanwhile, my entire life had just been split in half. I looked back at Daniel one last time. There's one thing I still don't understand. He waited. Why tonight? What do you mean? Why bring me here? To this event? To the one place where she would be? He frowned. I didn't know she'd be here. But Claire had said the opposite. She said she thought she might see him tonight, which meant someone was lying again. And suddenly a cold realization crept through me. What charity is this event for? I asked. Daniel blinked. The Literacy Foundation. I nodded slowly. And Claire works for them, doesn't she? His silence told me everything. So the truth was even worse than I thought. This wasn't just two separate lives that accidentally collided. They had been orbiting the same space for years, and tonight was the first time the walls between them had finally collapsed. For a while after that, neither of us said anything. The October air felt colder than it had when we first stepped outside.
Cars passed occasionally on the street in front of the venue, their headlights sliding across the pavement and disappearing again. Inside the building, people were still laughing. Glasses clinked. The band shifted into a louder song. It was strange how normal everything sounded when my entire life had just been turned upside down. Daniel leaned against the brick wall, rubbing his hands together like he didn't know what to do with them. "You think I planned this," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. I was staring through the glass doors where I could see Claire crouched next to Ethan, helping him wipe chocolate frosting off his face with a napkin. He was giggling, completely absorbed in the small disaster of cupcake icing. She looked normal, not like some villain who had intentionally wrecked my marriage, just a tired-looking mom at a charity event with her kid. I finally turned back to Daniel. "I think you've been lying to me for 6 years." His jaw tightened. "I didn't want to lose you." The words came out quickly, like they'd been sitting inside him for a long time. "That's why you kept this secret?" I asked. I didn't know how to fix it once it happened. I studied his face. "You cheated." "Yes." "You got someone pregnant." "Yes." "You let me build an entire life with you while hiding a child." His voice dropped lower. "I told myself I'd figure it out." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't figure it out, Daniel. You just kept stacking lies until they buried the truth." He looked exhausted now, the panic from earlier replaced by something heavier. "I was 29 when it happened," he said. "You were traveling for work all the time back then. I was stupid. I thought it was just a one-night mistake." I felt that old memory flash through my head. 6 years ago, I had been flying constantly for a consulting project in Chicago. Monday mornings on early flights, Thursday nights getting home late. I trusted him completely during that time. "And when she got pregnant?" I asked. He stared down at the sidewalk. I panicked, clearly. "I told her I was married. I told her I couldn't leave you." That surprised me enough to pause. "So you were honest with her?" Claire's voice answered from behind us. "Yes." We both turned. She had stepped outside at some point, leaving Ethan inside with the volunteers running a kids' activity table. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. "I knew he was married from the beginning," she said. The cold air made her cheeks red, but her expression was steady now, not panicked like before. Just tired. "I never expected him to leave you," she continued. "I told him that when Ethan was born." I looked between the two of them. "So what exactly was the long-term plan here?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you both just quietly built a second life around my marriage." Claire shook her head. "I didn't build anything around your marriage. I built a life for my son." Her tone wasn't defensive. It was factual. "That's why Daniel helped us," she added. I looked at him. "You mean that's why he emptied our savings account?" Daniel sighed. "It wasn't just that." My eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" He hesitated again, which was becoming a pattern. Then he said something that made the ground shift under me again. "I bought their house." For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard him. "You what?" Claire looked uncomfortable now. "It's small," she said quickly. "A little 2-bedroom place on the west side. It's nothing fancy." "But that wasn't the point." "You bought a house," I said slowly, looking back at Daniel. He nodded. "With what money?" He didn't answer. My chest tightened. "How much?" Still silence. "Daniel." He exhaled. $80,000 for the down payment. I felt dizzy. So the $40,000 from our savings was part of it. Part of it. I laughed again, but there was no humor left in it. "You secretly bought a house for the woman you cheated on me with and the child you hid from me."
Claire spoke softly. I didn't know where the money came from. I believed her, because the shock on her face earlier had looked real. Daniel had been managing 2 different stories for 6 years, 2 different versions of himself. You told me you were setting up college funds, Claire said quietly to him. He looked miserable. I was. For Ethan? And future things. That was when something inside me finally settled. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity. For months I'd been feeling the distance in our marriage, the strange late nights, the missing money, the quiet way Daniel had slowly drifted somewhere I couldn't follow. Now I understood why. He hadn't drifted, he'd divided himself. 2 homes, 2 responsibilities, 2 separate realities. And somehow he thought he could keep both forever. I looked through the glass doors again. Ethan was sitting at a small table inside, swinging his legs while he finished another cupcake. He looked happy, safe, like a kid who believed the adults in his world had everything under control. Does he know about me? I asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. No. Claire added gently. He just knows Daniel is his dad. Of course he did. I nodded once. Then I looked back at Daniel. You should go back inside. His eyebrows pulled together. What? Your son is waiting. The word son felt strange in my mouth. He hesitated. What about us? I held his gaze. There is no us tonight. Pain flickered across his face. I still love you. Maybe he did. But love wasn't the problem anymore. Secrets were. You should go inside, I repeated quietly. After a long moment, he nodded and walked back toward the door. Claire followed him in without another word. I stayed outside. The street was quiet, the city lights reflecting off the river a few blocks away. 6 years. An entire child. A house. Tens of thousands of dollars. All hidden inside the marriage I thought I understood. I stood there for a long time thinking about everything that had just happened. About the life waiting for me back in our house. About the empty garage Daniel had promised to remodel for my birthday. And about the boy inside who had no idea that the woman standing out here used to think she was the only family his father had. Eventually I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and stared at the numbers that suddenly meant something completely different. Then I did the simplest thing I could think of. I transferred every remaining dollar from our joint savings into an account that only had my name on it. For the first time that night, my hands stopped shaking. Inside the building, I could see Daniel sitting beside Ethan now, helping him peel the wrapper off a cupcake while Claire talked to someone across the table. They looked like a family, and maybe, in their own complicated way, they were. But as I stood there under the cold October sky, I realized something with absolute certainty. They were not mine anymore.